Welcome back to Creating Stuff with Jim. I'm Jim, and it's time to create stuff. All right, let's get into this. The biggest modifications I have to make to the 3.4 to fit in the truck I'm using is I have to change the oil pan, the oil pickup tube for the oil pump, along with the block mounted engine mounts. And the beauty part about this swap is all of these parts can be found off another engine. Is the year truck that I'm using had a V6 in it. It was a 3-liter V6. It was nowhere near as powerful nor reliable as the 3.4. So they were not very popular. So anyways, and that's the going trend on this, is any part you need to fit a 3.4 into an older Toyota truck is you take it off of the 3-liter. And the nice thing is the 3-liter had their share of problems, so it's generally not hard to find one that's blown up somewhere. All these parts, I was lucky. I found a blown up engine on Facebook Marketplace, and I paid all of $100 for the part. Because you can buy the oil pan and pickup tube. They still sell those brand new. That'll cost you about $400. And the last time I checked these mounts on eBay, you get them for about $300. So once again, you get a decent saving in parts, and once again, you get them out of a junkyard. I got them all for $100. So anyways, well, that's the biggest thing we got to do to get this engine in. Well, not to get it in. That's the biggest thing we got to do to modify it. So we're gonna get started on this. So let's get the engine up on the engine stand, get it flipped over, and get the oil pan off. So let's get to work. All right, now that we got the engine on the engine stand, I just wanted to give a few tips and tricks if anyone decides to do a motor swap themselves. And because there's a couple things that I find out work very well. Is number one, I like to get everything out of the same vehicle whenever possible. Meaning the engine, transmission, wiring harness, ECM all came out of the same vehicle. So like I said, so they should work together. Makes it a lot easier. Now the second thing is, like I said, I take the ECM. Granted, this engine, has set for at least a year. Like I said, because it's been a while. I've been gathering parts for a while, and I just now have enough parts to start putting it together. So, like I said, they've been sitting for a while, so I don't lose anything. All the plugs that I need off of the wiring harness, I tape them to the ECM, and then the other thing I do is I write the VIN number of the vehicle it came off of on the ECM, so it makes it a lot easier to find wiring diagrams. And I know all this wiring looks confusing, and it can look quite intimidating from sometimes, but don't let it be intimidating. There's no reason for it to be. And later on, when I get more into the wiring, I'm going to show you a few things why not to be afraid of it. So, but anyways, that's a whole nother video in itself. But this oil pan is not going to change itself. So let's get to work. All right, this view is for the people who've never seen the inside of an engine. So I'm just going to point a few things out. These are just for your information. Like I said, if you've never seen any of this before, but these are some of the basic components that you might have seen in pictures, diagrams when you're in high school or science class or whatever. But this is stuff you normally don't see. Is, like I said, once again, this engine's upside down, and these right here are your connecting rods, and they connect the crankshaft to the pistons, and the crankshaft is actually what turns to give your rotational energy. So, and then these are counterweights, and these are part of the crankshaft. And although the crankshaft is called a shaft, it's not straight. You have a straight section. You have a straight section in the front, and then it has to dip down a certain amount, whatever distance the engineers decide to place the connecting rods. And all that determines how the engine performs. So, crankshaft connecting rods. These are the main cap girdles. This is an option that the engineers decide to do that really helps keep the rigidity of the block. So the crankshaft helps stay straight no matter how much power you put on it. And back here, this is normally it's called a flywheel. This is actually a flex plate because you have a big heavy torque converter that bolts on the back. So the torque converter acts as the dead weight for the flywheel. So whenever you start your car and the starter hits, these teeth are right here is what the starter engages to actually start the engine. So, and as you might have seen in the time lapse, is I had to do a little bit of modification to the oil pickup tube. Is I had to cut one leg of it off, and now it'll bolt right down just fine. So that's all done, and the piece you might have seen me take off is this piece. This piece right here. That's called a windage tray. A windage tray. And more or less what that does is when the crankshaft is spinning around, is it slings oil. So it keeps the oil, it hits that pan so it doesn't splash the pool of oil in the oil pan that's in reserve and foam it up. So that's what the windage tray is done for. And last but not least, how many times have you checked your oil? Is that's the other end of the dipstick. That's where the dipstick comes out the bottom. So you're used to pulling that out, seeing a little bit of oil on the end to determine your oil level. There's the working end of the dipstick. You normally don't see this end of it. So anyways, I got to get some parts cleaned up so we can get this oil pan installed, get this engine off the stand, and get ready to move on. So why are we sitting here talking about this? Let's get to work. All right, now that we got everything clean, I got a new gasket for the oil pan, but unfortunately, for some odd reason, I don't know why, but I couldn't find a gasket for the oil pump pickup tube. Most of the times, if you get a complete gasket kit for the entire engine, it's guaranteed to be there. And for some odd reason, I don't know why I couldn't find one. So, anyways, so I bought an oil pan gasket, and because it was cheap, it only cost me like $5, and I just really didn't want to spend the money for the whole gasket set just to get this one gasket. So we're going to do it the old-fashioned way. We're actually going to make one. Like I say, luckily I was able to buy a pack of different gasket materials. Normally they come in a roll, but it's nice because it's flat and I don't have a curve that I have to deal with. So anyways, and the nice thing is on the pack it tells you what kind of fluid it can withstand. So anyways, this stuff right here will handle engine oil. That's what that is, and this actually has no pressure to it because it actually has a vacuum to it, which is still important that it seals very well, but we got to put a gasket in there nonetheless. So and for all you people that are not mechanics or looking this because they want to learn something, and actually I'm going to tell you what the purpose of a gasket is for. is for this will be a brief description, but for all the people that know all this stuff, feel free to fast forward. Anyways, the biggest reason that a gasket is needed is to make two separate imperfect surfaces, because this piece of metal and the mating surface on the block are not perfectly matched. So if you bolt them up without a gasket, it's going to leak. And in this case, it won't necessarily leak oil, but since this is pulling a vacuum to pull the oil out of the pan, it just won't pull any oil, and you'll have no oil pressure, and you're going to lose your engine if you keep running it. So anyway, so this has no pressure, but it can withstand pressure. So that's the purpose of a gasket, to, once again, to seal two imperfect faces together. So to start making our gasket, I said we have the surface we need to make. We have our gasket material. And this method I'm going to use is Sharpie, a pair of scissors, and yes, these are medical trauma shears, and they work great out in the shop, but they're not that expensive. So, and then I will need a gasket punch set of the appropriate sizes. So, all right, let's get started. And I have to let since the shape of the pickup tube, I have to let it hang off the side of the bench in order to do this. So to start, I'm just going to take a Sharpie. I'm going to trace the outline, and then I'm going to put a couple circles inside the bolt holes where the bolt holes go. All right, that's the general shape. That's the general shape I need. All right, so now that I have the traced outline and I got my marks for my two holes, is I'm gonna take a 1/4 inch gasket punch, place it right over top of the hole that I marked. Couple taps with a hammer, instant hole. Then I'm gonna do it again on the other mark I made. Voila, 2 instant holes. And this is another note, as you notice right here, is whenever you use a gasket punch like this, you have to make sure that you're working on a piece of wood. If you're on a piece of concrete, a piece of steel, you're gonna damage the cutter. So make sure you're sitting on a piece of wood. If you're not on a piece of wood, get a block of wood. Otherwise, they're gonna get damaged. And that was a 1/4 inch gasket punch. Now I'm gonna go to a 7/8 to do the big hole for the oil pickup. Oh, that one needs a little bit more oomph to it. Voila, instant hole. So now, hate to say it, act like you're back in kindergarten. And just stay inside the lines. And cut it out. There we go. It looks like that fits pretty good. Instant gasket, and you didn't have to buy a whole kit to get it. So like I said, that works. Now let me get set up. I'm going to show you another way to make a gasket. All right. Now I'm going to show you another way how you can cut a gasket. I've already cut a gasket, but like I said, there's more than one way to skin a cat. So I just want to show you just other ways. There's other ways that people do it. And the truth of it is, don't let anyone tell you one way is better than the other. They all work. And it really is what it is. And like I said, other ways, if you don't have a gasket cutter available and you're in a pinch, there's other ways you can do it. So anyways, this way, is actually I'll show you another way to do it and then another way you can mark it. So basically, so I took the old pickup tube that I took out of the 3.4, just because the other one's ready to go, don't want to mess with it. Cleaned it off, cut off a piece of gasket material. So, and basically gonna lay it on top. Then you take a ball peen hammer. You notice how it has a nice ball into it. You take that end and you hold it in one spot. Ah, she moved on me. So try to hold it in one spot. And use the ball end of the hammer, and it actually cuts the hole for you. So then we're going to cheat a little bit just to help keep it lined up. I just take an extra fastener, move that out of the way. I'm going to put the one fastener in there to help keep it lined up so it doesn't move on me. Now, it'd help if I was over the right spot. There, I got two holes. They line up perfectly. So now that big hole, a little hard, but hey, you don't know what you can do until you try. Check this out. Voila, no gasket punch, and got it all cut out. So, and then the rest of it, I could trace it out and cut it out just the same. Really easy. And now, and there's yet another way you can do it. All right, and here we go to yet another way you can cut it. You can cut a gasket, and this one we're going to mark it a little different. Is say like you don't have a gasket punch, you don't have a ball peen hammer. So once again, how can you do it again? So what we're going to do, we're going to take a little bit of grease, any grease, and just smear it on your gasket surface. Don't worry, you can wash it off. Just get a little bit of brake clean, it'll come right off. So then a little bit of grease. Let it. Anyways, you get the idea. And I let it slide on me, so it kind of got distorted a little bit. But even with that right there, that's a really good mark. You just take a razor knife, and you can cut everything out. This is probably the toughest way to do it, but it is possible. So that's 3 ways on how you can cut a gasket. And there's nothing wrong with any ways. However you can do it to make it work so it seals and it doesn't leak, it works. So anyways, those are just some simple mechanic trade secrets. I don't want to call it, but anyways, but that's a couple ways on how you can make a gasket when you don't have one. So, all right, now that we're done playing, we got the gasket made. Now let's get all the parts back over to the engine. Let's get this. Let's get the oil pan, the pickup tube, everything all bolted up. Get the motor mounts on it, so we can spin it over and get ready to put it in the truck. So, all right, let's get to work. For some odd reason, I misplaced the footage for bolting the oil pan back on the engine. So, unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave you with this clip of me rotating the engine right side up to getting it ready to put into the truck. But we're just getting started with this project, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. And if you tune in with the next episode, I will be working on transmission, getting it ready to go in as well. So if you like the video, please like it, share it with your friends, and I'll see you next time.